Today, we are marking 10 years since one of Canada's worst rail disasters, which killed 47 people in the town of Lac-Mégantic, Quebec. Just after 1 in the morning, 10 years ago today, an unattended 73-car freight train carrying crude oil rolled down a hill and derailed right in the heart of Lac-Mégantic. It triggered this huge explosion and incinerated more than half the buildings in that area. The disaster led to a number of changes in Canada's rail industry, but are they enough? Joining us with a closer look at what rail safety looks like today is Professor of Environmental and Urban Change at York University, Mark Winfield. Welcome.
Good morning.
You know, it's shocking to look back at those pictures and just remember what was happening in the morning 10 years ago. What has changed since the derailment in Lac-Mégantic?
There have been some changes, particularly around one-person operation of trains. The rules around tank cars were changed as well. There has been some increased focus on enforcement by Transport Canada, but in many ways, the basic regulatory framework that allowed this to happen largely remains in place. That the framework for railway safety essentially remains a relatively, it's essentially a self-regulatory system on the part of the railroads.
You know, that disaster was blamed on what the rail industry calls uncontrolled movement. In 2013, there were 69 occurrences of uncontrolled movements, and then in 2019, there were 78. You say that in some ways the risk of a disaster like the one that we saw in Quebec is actually higher now than it was then. Why?
I think the risk certainly remains. I think would be a better way to frame that. That we continue to see problems in the rail sector, uncontrolled train movements, but also derailments involving dangerous goods. That there are trends happening within the railway industry itself through consolidation and competitive pressures, in some ways to emphasize efficiency of operations over safety, and trains themselves are becoming bigger. So what we may have done to somewhat tighten the rules post Lac-Mégantic is being offset by other things that are happening in the sector.
So let's talk about that. Between 2012 and 2021, there were an average of 1,043 rail accidents per year, with an average of 4 years, leading to the release of the hazardous materials. So what changes need to come to address some of the problems that you've described? What needs to improve?
There are many layers to this. Some of these are technological. Certainly, many people have argued that we should be moving towards positive train control, which gives operators much higher degree of control over trains and can stop uncontrolled train movements. That we should move to electronic braking systems, which again are much more effective. And again, the technologies are there, but the rules have not been changed. And then at a deeper level, many people still point to the relationship between the railways and Transport Canada, and look at this still as a case of regulatory capture, where the regulator is too deferential to the railways, that it needs to be much more assertive in its approach. It relies far too much on letting the railways effectively write the rules for themselves.
Mark Winfield, on a day that we are looking back and remembering, it's also good to take a look forward and improvements that still need to come. Thanks for joining us today.
Great, thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.